Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second of our little Atlanta regional mini-series. Today with me, last week I had Brody. Today, I have the opposite end of the spectrum. Brody, very new player. David, very old player. Some of you may know him. David Thomas has been playing the game for how long now?
Since the end of 2018.
The end of 2018. So much longer than anyone else at the MGLA. Our most veteran player, our most successful, most veteran player. Sorry, our most successful veteran player.
Combine those things.
My bad.
Like, together.
My bad. But yeah, so we're here to talk about the Atlanta Regional from a different perspective than last week, because we talked to Brody a lot about what's your experience going to a regional for the first time. You know, what did you expect? But you've been to so many regionals. You already knew what to expect, right? So that's why with you, I wanted to talk about, you know, what was special about this regional. And if you could go ahead and touch on that, it might enlighten the viewers on why we did this one after Brody's.
Yeah, so one of the biggest reason why this regional was so special, and if you played me in rounds, I probably yapped your ear off about this as well, but at least for the foreseeable future, this was my last regional or really major competitive event I'll be playing in for UVS. So yeah, because of that, it was really special. I'm glad I happened to do pretty well in the event overall, but that was the big thing about it. Is this was my final hurrah, saying like, can I still do it as a competitive player?
For sure. So that brings me to wanting to talk about leading up to the event. You know, month before, week before. What was kind of your thoughts going through your head? What was that experience? Especially because this is something that, at least to the team, you've been saying for a bit about how you were excited for this event because it is probably your last foray for the time being into competitive. What was the month, week leading up to the event like for you?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to start a little bit further back and kind of wind back to, let's say, the beginning of the 2024 season. And it's like when the roadmap was announced and I was looking at things, I was really thinking about it. And I mean, for the most part, I'd like just come off of helping judge at the HLC, soon to be Worlds event. And I had already kind of seen that as my last events that I was really participating. I guess maybe every year I'll just go through the song and dance. I'm starting to realize, but at the time I thought, okay, I'm done. But then when we saw that, well, we're actually going to get an East Coast regional within reason. Originally, it was going to be Charlotte, right? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it was Charlotte.
So Charlotte, we were all pretty excited. I think a bunch of us were already like, yeah, we're going to show up for that. And so I kind of had it in my head, like, okay, come October, like this is going to be one that I'm going to try at. And so just about like one and a half months prior to Atlanta, I really started actually trying again, because for a while I'd just been kind of taking it off, not really showing up to locals all the time, but still talking with the team. But at that point I was trying to figure out, like, okay, what decks make sense, like what fits my play style, what would be best. And so for a while I thought that I was going to riff off of another person on the team, Travis Tangeman, and I was just going to try to take one of his decks and run it pretty much card for card all the way into the regional. And so I was looking at the Elder Toguro deck that he won the St. Louis regional with, which, important to note, shout outs to Dean, aka Mr. Pringlesman, the originator of the idea. I want to make sure he gets his credit there.
For sure.
But yeah, so I'd been grinding out that deck for like pretty much a month at it, and it started with some TTS, just trying to figure out once I wanted to commit to it. Started bringing it to locals a bit, and so the first couple times it was a little rough, but the final time I felt like I was starting to get the hang of it. But
I do remember the first few times where it's like it was one of our LQs, I think, and like you went like 0-3, and I was like, man, David's really playing a hard deck. Like, this is crazy. And the growth from like that event to like fast forward like 2 or 3 weeks, you've gotten used to the deck. It was actually insane. But yeah, feel free.
Yeah, so the biggest thing I'll just quickly touch on is I realized I had kind of misunderstood what the deck was going for. in full disclosure, I didn't watch all of the St. Louis regional, so I didn't actually get to see how it was kind of doing its thing at times. I just have been like hearing like, oh, it's just a railgun combo deck, and so I tried playing it like a OTK, kind of like the old Detroit Smash, All Might 4, just railgun you once and it's over. That did not work well. Once I started understanding, like, no, you can play it. You can either just stall it out to the late game, go for a couple more chip attacks if you need to. Like, things started to work out a little bit better. However, as you may know, if you're familiar with the deck I was playing at the regional, that's not what I ended up playing. And so the reason for the swap was because the locals before Atlanta, like we were all getting ready, and I played it then as well, and I think I did okay. I can't remember. I went like 2-1 or something.
I think your only
right?
loss was to either me or Brody. I don't remember what, because I don't remember how I ended up doing at that locals. But I do remember specifically the match you might about to be talking about, which is playing specifically into Brody playing not quite the Rodan list that 3-4 of us took. Three of us took. It was you, Travis, and
Brody.
Exactly. Yeah, because I was gonna take it. As the viewer, if they watched last week, already knows, I did not take it because I was scared of getting burnt out on the deck, and then explicitly didn't play much the week before, so that I wouldn't, and then got burnt out on the deck anyways. But you were playing into Brody playing a similar version of the deck. He didn't quite go back to the full version of Travis's that he ended up playing for the regional. And I was sitting there kind of helping him with the deck. It was either after locals or the last match of locals.
Yeah, it was like the last match. It was just like some sequencing things because we were still trying to figure out, like, making sure everyone knew what lines they were supposed to be playing. So, like, from my perspective, I didn't care that someone was getting like, okay, this is how we're trying to figure out things, because from our perspective, like the locals was pretty much our team plus like a few other people. So I'm not going to be selfish and say like, no, you have to play this as is. It's like, if we need to still figure out some pieces, get people there for the event, then that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was in the midst of that and the ensuing conversation between you and myself, where just like it was 3 simple points. It was, look at all all that you have to do in order to match exactly what Rodan gets to do. You play way easier defense with Rodan, and the deck pilots itself. I believe that was the last line. And so it's like I thought about it, and it was like 7-8 p.m. on Sunday, and I was like, okay, like, what do you think? You think 3 days? Figure out, okay, how like, I have actually not played this deck at all. I have played against it. I like mostly know it from that kind of experience. Do you think I can just pick it up and figure out how to go? And you're like, well, if you're a good enough player, you can probably figure it out. And I also messaged Travis at the time, like, hey, you think I can just pick up Rodan? And he's like, yeah, absolutely, you could probably pick it up. So with less than a week, I swapped the deck I'd been practicing for a month and proceeded to jam like 2 to 3 hours per day on Rodan leading up to the event. It sure didn't help that I ended up losing Wednesday as a training day, because I, for some reason, thought my flight was Thursday morning. And you're probably remembering this. And lo and behold, then the best part about it is I checked and saw my hotels were Friday.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I thought my flight was Thursday and just thought I'd messed that up. No, in fact, everything was Friday. But because of that, I didn't practice Wednesday. And so I also didn't practice Thursday because I was kind of like doing the same thing. Like I ended up just taking that day off from work anyways.
Yeah.
So I effectively had Monday, Tuesday, and then Friday night to learn the deck. That is pretty much how it went.
And so I want to talk about that last week, because I certainly was a part of that, testing as a team. But I know specifically with that Rodan deck you played in me, because I'd been playing the Rodan deck slightly longer. By slightly, I mean like a week or two. But like I don't know, the deck was definitely set up in a way that I picked up on it very quickly. I felt like I had success the first time I played it, and that's probably maybe everyone else got that with the deck as well. Maybe I had some insight. Who knows, right? But what was it like the week before? And kind of being in a situation where whenever you played into me, at least, I would play the Ryukyu deck because I was trying to figure out that matchup from the Rodan side. So I figured if I play Ryukyu, I might have some insight. And losing basically every single one, unfortunately.
I'll be honest. I was kind of just ready to pick up Ryukyu that Friday like evening. I was ready to be like, look, I could probably just play this ridiculous character better because I am currently just not getting anywhere. Like, you were stuffing me out of the game. I had no idea what I was going to do against this ridiculous game plan where, like, you just were able to play better defense in the round we had. You were playing better defense than me. We're able to progress, like, the board state much more effectively. And yeah, I was hitting rock bottom, I'll be honest at that point. Like I was kind of done. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do tomorrow. Like, maybe I should just like quit and go side events. So
that's a little bit concerning. I feel a little bit bad now. But what turned it around for you?
You were doing some, like, you were crushing your opponent's will to live. There's a reason you got a high seed. You probably just took out your opponent with mental damage as well. I don't know. I wasn't watching you. I was busy doing my own thing during rounds.
Yeah, for sure. But what ended up turning around for you? If it was kind of seeming dire, was there any other matchups that did it start to seem like maybe that was the only matchup, or what was kind of, because I want to give the viewer a little bit of insight into, like, sometimes we do have these feelings of like direness the day before the event, because I know a lot of people have a lot of testing go wrong the exact day before the event.
Yep, and I've definitely been on the other side of that. I've had decks where I thought it went well, and then I end up going like 2-4 drop because I decided to stick for X and 4. So in this case, I'm trying to think what exactly was the difference. I mean, I think honestly, I think it was like some of the small sequencing things that started to help me out a little bit, because of course, I've realized about myself, reps on a deck really is the most important thing. For example, I picked up the Ling Xiaoyu deck for last Wednesday weekly, and the way I realized I was going to get comfortable was I just played hands of it for like an hour or so, just constantly going through the lines, understanding my decision trees, because sometimes like I can't just like factually see something. I kind of have to just play it out and realize where I get with it. And I think I was starting to get that a little bit more going into Friday. I think maybe like 2 to 3 days was like the right amount of time. But like I was saying, though, it's like sometimes it's a small little things. Like there was I remember you gave me a tip that, like, I'm not sure if it was something that you had or like Travis or up the ancestry chain on this, but it's like you try to play the Supersonic Flight as or Hypersonic Flight as the last card, like especially if you're going second, so you can just bin it because now it's just on top of your discard pile for -4 draw a card, going right into turn 2 where you are potentially weakest. I will say I still had some room to grow with the deck because I was missequencing some things. Like I think the 2 most egregious versions I did of it were early on when I had an attack blocked and I still tried playing it as my last, and then one clearing card pool realizing, okay, well, that doesn't work. And then the one I feel worst about, because it was caught live on stream, was when I played in attack, knew I was going to hit, but I proceed to combine firepower and then do it at the end, and I'm like, yes, I hit with my attack, and then realize when I clear my card pool, combined firepower goes on top, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to clear this card out of anything. So it
can be rough.
Things there.
Yeah, it can be rough. I think that deck specifically, you have to have a focus on sequencing, where like the deck itself, not that hard to play. Like I think the deck itself doesn't have anything fancy it's doing. The most fancy thing, like you said, is the Supersonic Flight, bin it so you have a +4 on top. But like everything else about the deck is just sequencing, and like its lines do play itself, which is like I feel like that probably made for an easier and less stressful Swiss day. But I want to hear your perspective on that. So we've talked about week before, month before, everything leading up, last event, all that stuff, and changing decks before all this, almost seeming like very stressful environment, right? Now we're the day of. Right.
Yep.
What is so like going into round 1? Because we talked to Brody last week, and that's where a lot of this is, because I want to really connect these 2 stories. Right. So last week, Brody talked about how round 1 was incredibly stressful because he'd never done an event before, and I talked about you sit down, you get used to it, right? You get used to sitting down across from someone you don't know, unless you're me and you get paired into Jacob Johnson round 1 playing the same deck as you. But so back to the question at hand. Swiss day, you wake up, what's the thoughts going through your head? What's the feelings?
Yeah, so for me, I've been kind of like curating what my like day of for competition really is. And I think for better or for worse, I usually find it to be the period when I wish to be in like the highest peak physical performance as possible, despite being a lazy bum the rest of the time. For some reason, this is the time when I'm going to wake up like 7 a.m., get like oatmeal granola or something. But before that, of course, I'm going to go down to the gym. I'm going to exercise for like half an hour or so, like get cardio going, which I do not do like during the rest of my time. Like that is not a normal thing for me. But when I go to an event, like this is what I just want to do. And so for me, it just kind of gets me into that right like space. I very much think that whole idea of like physical condition translates into better mental performance for things. I wish I would just practice a bit more of what I preach, but usually like when I'm feeling good about myself, I feel like I can perform better. I can focus a lot more on what I'm doing.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people don't realize, because this is a card game. This is mostly our hobbies. I don't think anyone's trying to make a true living off of this game, luckily. But you know, you want to make some money if you're one of those players that can consistently top, but you're not making like a full living, right? So it is important to remind yourself to have fun, but also winning is fun, right? And I don't think people realize the amount your body matters for like mental sports, essentially, right? Like if we compare to chess, you know, chess is obviously very different than card games, but also not really, in the sense that it is at the end of the day a mental sport. It's a mental competition. And I think the statistics are like chess players like burn more or the same amount of calories as like actual athletes through a full day of chess. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I think starting with that at the beginning of your day is like really important.
Yeah, I keep telling Ashlyn that, and she keeps getting worried. Ashlyn, by the way, is my wife. It's like I go, yeah. So I checked my like Fitbit, and I burned like 3,000 to 4,000 calories just playing card games. And she's like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, yeah. Well, so I mean, other fun facts is like definitely happened a couple times this tournament, but it's like when you're in stressful situations or just like peak focus, I had my heart rate shoot up to like 150. I don't think it ever crested 160, but certainly high enough that I think by round, what was it? Let me check, because I know exactly who I was talking to during this. Oh yeah, during round 6, I had apparently had my heart rate high enough throughout the day that I got in my like zone minutes, my exercise minutes done for the whole day at that point. And I normally never do unless I'm like doing Zumba or like an hour of like on the elliptical and pushing myself. So the fact that 6 hours of Swiss already like pushes me to get that kind of like physical or like cardiovascular exertion was kind of wild. And so I will say that kind of tying it to what you mentioned in terms of like the first round opponents as well, because like not in this one, but definitely when I run into like people I don't know in round 1, because it's totally random. There's no like pre-power seeding or anything. Like you're just going right in with could be anyone. I could be fighting Kevin Broberg immediately, right? 2022 champion, or I could be fighting some Joe Schmo. And so yeah, the first one's always the scariest. But not this time. I, just like you, ran into another team member. I ended up fighting Mike Vina, another person from the MGLA. And in all fairness, it was actually, at least for me, my heart rate was actually a lot lower because it was someone I knew. He did tell me he like his heart was pounding, like trying to figure out what to do. It also didn't help for him. He and I had been practicing the night prior, and I think like I had his number for at least 2 to 3 of like the practice games at that point. Like kind of like how you had pretty much locked me out. I was kind of having the same thing. It's like I was finally starting to get the deck, and I was like doing the Rodan thing of like you do nothing and then you overexert, or I find the right cards and I just end you. So I definitely got a little bit more relaxed because of that, but of course we're teammates. So like first thing I was talking about with him is like, okay, like this is just round one. Like we're trying, like let's just try to make sure like we're keeping this as focused. But one thing that we agreed on, or like that I offered, was like we have a whole day ahead of us. Like, we can use this as a more focused practice game as well, and like talk through lines, right? There's nothing stopping us from like communicating with each other, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I mean, call it what you will. Like I felt like it made more sense to me to be able to talk with him, and maybe even the reverse, about like, okay, well, this is what I was thinking here. Like, how did you feel about this? I'm still trying to figure out like what the threat assessment is of my opponent on certain things.
Exactly.
So,
I think day of testing is obviously a little bit too late, but it's not useless, right? Like it's still useful. And I think having that mentality is possibly the difference, because, talking with Mike during the day, and we'll have a mini series with Mike as well. I have no idea what the topic for that is yet, but I'll talk with him and figure that out. But I do know that his day was a little bit more stressful than yours, because you ended up taking the match. And I think that round one, unfortunately, was part of it. But I think that comes more down to Mike's been to a lot less events than you have. So I think your perspective was certainly part of that. Because your perspective on round one, and specifically teammate round ones, was probably very different than his. Because you and I both know that when it comes to teammate round ones, that really it's not that stressful. Like, you can make it stressful, but you shouldn't, because A, that's going to make the rest of your day harder, and B, one of you has to win, one of you has to lose. Like a tie there ruins both of your brackets, and actually the win and loss is great, because one of you rules the lower brackets, the other one rules the higher brackets. Like that's the theory from a team, right?
Yeah.
So
I will say I did grumble when I saw, because I was like, I didn't want to have to fight a teammate round one. Like I'd rather fight someone I didn't know and like knock them out. But yeah, exactly. It's like we still play this seriously, but we also know each other a little bit better, for better or for worse. So like that can give us some comfortability. We're not worried about, say, the other person's like emotions. Like you're not going to have someone potentially go off on you, right? Like I'm not worried about Mike. Well, because honestly, like I have had some situations like that where I've encountered people where I'm playing with them, and I just think to myself, I'm not sure I want to continue like after like this. This has been a bit of a down, like a downer, in the sense of like, just the mood, the vibe is just like it ain't there. And so I will say that thankfully Mike was a great opponent overall. So we didn't have to worry about that. So that, that's
connecting to that, and connecting a little bit to before that, the question that I kind of wanted to pick your brain about is, being a veteran player, having gone to these events, what is first off, like, you can connect it to the team thing of like, how do you keep that like very positive perspective, win or lose that round? Because I always say when I get paired in teammates that most of the time I don't like winning those games, because I hate knocking out teammates. But it's usually for later rounds, So like LCQ, I happen to be paired in a mic, and it's like I'm sitting across. It was like round 3, so we can't be as like, because the LCQ you weren't allowed to lose a round, so we have to be very serious. We're not allowed to like do the kind of practice thing that you guys were doing. Or not practice, but the more open thing. And it's like sitting across from him and seeing clear misplays that I've told him before not to do. It kind of sucks, but. Sorry, back to the question. I got a little sidetracked there. But what is your advice to a newer player on that first round experience, whether you get paired into a teammate, whether you get paired into someone new, on keeping a healthy mentality throughout the day, right? Because events are stressful. These competitive events are very stressful. So sometimes I'm not going to fault the player who gets to round 4, loses, and like misses the vibe check because they're upset about it. Like I think you are absolutely allowed to be very upset. So like, what's your advice to not get to that point? What's your advice to keep that up throughout the day, and then continue the rest of your day and win out? And you could even connect. I don't know when you lost your rounds throughout Swiss, but you can even connect it to that, because I'm not sure when that was.
Yeah, I can certainly tell you, because I jinxed myself apparently in our Discord chat. So the biggest thing that I found, this is going to sound a little hokey, but I genuinely mean all this. So the weird thing is that it's like, for me, when I play this game, or like when I play in like competitive events like this, I kind of get like this feeling of like acceptance, weirdly enough. It's especially if I'm like on a hot streak like that, like especially on that. And maybe it's like some might say it's kind of like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like that's the other thing. Like, oh, things are going so well. But I would say to me, I've adapted this mentality of kind of gratitude as like, hey, I've been doing well, or I feel like I've been performing my part well. Like when I've had that, even in my losses, like if I feel like I have done things correctly or I've assessed, and it is literally just luck essentially, right? How the deck is stacked. Like, did they check a 5? Did they check a 3? And if that's what it came down to, and I've done everything else right from my perspective, I can be happy with that.
Okay,
now
so you focus on like how you feel about the performance and less on the results of the performance.
Yeah, I mean, I will say there have been a couple times when I've let that slip, and it usually is, funny enough, I think like always in top cuts, and it's when I kind of feel like I start getting a little bit too sure of myself, and I feel like overly. Well, I can't say overly confident, but get like more confident, and I break that mentality where I start thinking like, oh yeah, no, I'm gonna be good. I'm gonna be fine. Like I can easily take whatever's coming.
Almost like tunnel vision, right? Because like I also tend to have that problem. Is like you get really confident, you think the game is essentially over because you've out tempoed your opponent or whatever, and then you tunnel on one thing that loses you the game, right? Is that kind of what you're touching at?
I would say actually it's even like right at the beginning. It's like how I end up approaching the match is it's like I'll look like like I'll see my match and just go, I'm 4-0. Like this will be fine. And so like that's kind of like the mentality where I like I said, this is terrible anecdotal, but it's like whenever I fall for something like that, bad things tend to happen to me. And so the great example is my first and technically only loss in Swiss is I was 4-0 and I go and chat. We have like our little like round report channel, and I hadn't been keeping up. And so I just decided to say, I'll update here once I lose. Round 5 pairings go up. It's Kevin. I look at him like,
yeah, that was your one. I forgot that was one of your one loss, as you said, because I wasn't as keen on the records because my day ended up being a lot of. I don't know, I felt very good about the day. Like I felt like I actually really, and clearly results show that because I ended up being seated third. But I feel like I really performed throughout Swiss and like was not stressed. Always like went back to my friends. I think part of that was I got the win against Jacob Johnson round 1, and I'm certainly going to attribute that mostly to luck. After the fact, day of, I'm gonna be like, I beat Jacob. I'm on top of it today. Which is like a really good mentality to have. Obviously, you can't always be so lucky that you get paired into someone that you respect very much and also happen to get the win, and that sets your mentality for the day. But I think keeping that positive outlook, even through losses, is really important throughout the day. Because it is important to always remember, if you're new to these events, it's about having fun. It's about playing this game that we love and playing it at whatever level you want to. If you're just there to because you like the game and you want to go 0-3 drop and then play some side events, that's awesome. You should enjoy that and like not be too stressed about that. If you're there to try and top cut and you are just barely out because you happen to be 5-3, at least know that the opponents you met are almost certainly good people. Most people in our community are, and that hopefully you played those games well and you learned something, which is really important.
Funny enough, actually, I talked about keeping this positive mentality. Positive mentality, I will note, does not equate low stress. I was stressed out through most of Swiss, actually.
Yeah.
So just to give like a high level overview, round 1 was against Mount Lady Mike. Round 2 was actually against another Massachusetts local who hadn't played as much. They actually learned, it was their first card game was UFS when they were like 9 or like 10. So they technically been playing longer than you. And he was on Fire Woman. And he teched into sideboarded into basically all throws. So I was going to die.
Oh yeah. You have to find your Mikasa's for that one. Mikasa stops the female Titan for anyone who doesn't know.
I had to find my Omni block essentially and like just like nullify the damage. Round 4 was against Gamer Toga. And just checked the 3 when I should have died. And so I broke serve twice, actually, because he took game 1. Round 5 was against Kevin. Took it to 3, but it was game 2 was my only win was like I had to claw at it, and then he blew me out game 3. Round 4 was against Travis. So we had the mirror there. Managed to barely eke it out game 1. Variant seemed to be a large part of that as well. I was seeing everything I needed. He wasn't seeing as much, but as you'd expect, still put up a very, very good fight for that.
Yeah.
Round 6 was against Joshua Atkins on his, I believe, Death Mirko 2. Once again, I literally won because he needed a 5 and checked a 4 after blowing up his entire stage for everything. 7 was against Biako. That was literally on the plane of throws until Momo secret rare from Girl Power to build a Thunderous Roar and then just explode my face.
Oh, that's very scary. Oh, Lord.
I tied that.
Okay,
we went
that
to
makes
time.
Sense. Yeah.
We literally went to time, and I just couldn't sequence 9 attacks in one turn to kill him.
Yeah,
because I ran out of time.
Yeah, Biako has so much health.
And then round 8 was a Rodan mirror, but it was against the all Rodan.
Who was that into? I'm curious.
Yeah, so that was into, I believe, let me get the name, just want to make sure. It was into Joseph Zimmerman.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was on the all Rodan list. I think him and potentially some of the other Let's Talk folks were working on that one. That one was a very strange game, and I'll just talk about it a little bit because as you'd expect, Rodan mirrors, it's going to be a control matchup most likely. So we're going to get through like a game 1. So I managed to eke out game 1 in like 33 minutes or so. So we start getting ready for game 2, and we're kind of realizing like, okay, he's on the clock to try and do something about this.
Yeah.
And like, okay, well, maybe I can also just turn this into, let's see what it looks like. By turn 3, I realize he's established a much better board than I do.
Yeah.
So I have to start trying to figure out like what's my game plan here. And I realize literally my game plan is I'm just going to block for 20 minutes and just run out the clock.
Sometimes that is your only option.
I just didn't expect it to be what I held on with 20 minutes left to go in regulation. Like that was not the like, sure, if we were 10 minutes away, I'm like, yeah, I can probably pull this off. But I went, oh my gosh, I have to I had to make the decision then because if I push too early, I'm going to get clapped. So I just had to sit. And the worst thing about it was he recognized it. And so he built out to 20 foundations or something. And I'll be honest, I didn't know half the things he had. And I like as much as I wanted to, I wasn't going to be the scumbag who was like, oh yeah, let me read that card, let me read this card, because I was going to have to sit there and read 10 different cards. Yeah. I'm like, nope, like I'm going to just figure this out. Like I'm pretty sure I know, like I know some people have different opinions about that, but I just wanted to make sure that like the way I was going to win the game was not because like, oh, I ran out the clock because I spent time being a reader, because who does that?
Yeah.
But instead playing what was eventually just impeccable defense, checking 5s at the right time, and Genkaiing the last attack into his hand with like 3 minutes left or something. And so we just decided to call it there.
Yeah. Stalling is okay to do. Slow playing is less okay to do. Yeah, at least if you're doing it explicitly, right? Obviously, newer players may not play as fast as veteran players, and we don't want to fault people for that. But stalling, okay. Slow play, a little less okay.
Yeah, like my goal was to say, like, I'm playing at the rate I normally do, but I'm going to take up so many more enhances and just play cards in a way that I'm just using up the time that I have.
Yeah, exactly.
Such that I'm not changing what I'm playing. I'm just playing enough cards that I will eat up the clock that way.
Yeah,
and that was my intention.
Yeah, because I'm sure the important thing you realize is that a tie was probably not okay for either of you, because it would have been
table 8.
5-1-2, which definitely was not making it.
Yes, yeah. We were at table 8. It would put us just outside, I think. So yeah, it was not a safe place to be at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So tying was out of the option. So sometimes you just have to go for not losing rather than go for the win. And getting game 1 in the control matchups is a good way to do that. Yeah, so I think with that, I think that sums up most of your event. I think we could talk about top cuts, but I think that conversation is, I don't think there's as much interesting to talk about there. compared to some of our other players who made top cuts. Specifically, our player who has gone to exactly 2 regionals and made top cuts on the second regional that they went to, which is Max. So that's probably what we'll talk about there. But woo, we love Mac.
Yeah. I was trying to think. I was like, Travis has been to more than 2. Hold on, what?
no, we can't forget Mac.
I was so confused.
Yeah,
I didn't forget Mac. He just wasn't the first that came to mind. Probably
Fair
because
enough.
he crushes my skull in every time he plays the Godzilla.
Yeah, that Godzilla deck is definitely scary, and it's so great to see that he performs so well with a deck with a character that he likes.
Yeah, I won't share any more of that story, but all I can say is I didn't see it coming, not from a player, but just from how I know that day started.
Yeah,
and that's all I will say.
Yeah, I'll certainly let them tell the story. But I want to take. We don't have much time left here because I don't want it to get too long. But I want to take the last few times. I'm going to throw about 3 questions at you that are all very similar, but I want you to answer which ones you think are best. So the 3 questions I got for you is I want to hear a little bit about what is next for you. But I also want to hear about anything that you're excited about, and this ties into that as a veteran UVS player that is coming up on the UVS scene. Like if you like the OP scene next year, or if you like any of the cards that have come out. And the last one, if you want to spend any time touching on it, is I do want to know, and I'm sure the viewer might want to know, is why have you stuck with UVS this long? So difficult task. Give you 3 questions tie into 1 answer, but go.
Oh, just 1 answer?
No. You could do more than 1 answer, but like
but I'll
I'm
keep
gonna
it
try
concise,
not to interrupt you. Those are just some ideas that I think the viewer might like.
Sounds good. Yeah, so to answer them in order, so what's up next for me? Well, if you've been looking at the Facebook page, you might have noticed that some articles have been going out. We've had some people on the team kind of start boosting the signal for the website. I've started doing a character article series for each of the AOT2 characters because right now what I really want to do is, because I can't go to events as much and won't be buying as much product, I still want to support the community in a way that I think I can. And right now that's just potentially putting out more content, which is part of why I'm here right now. I think it's really cool just being able to get stuff out there. So number 2, something that I'm pretty excited about for like upcoming for UVS, I'm really glad that they are like quote going back to their roots of sorts with some of these fighting game IPs. Do I think that we need to be exclusively fighting game? No, I really like this idea of just full IP diversity. I think we do it in a really cool way. I love how some characters can really translate the feeling of what they are on screen to how they play in game. Like, it has been really cool to see that, and that actually dovetails pretty well into the last part of why have I stuck with this for so long. I mean, I've definitely played quite a few trading card games in my life, not all of them competitively, but this is the only one that I've really cared to actually travel and put more time into because I love the mechanical richness that this game has at its core. There's just so much that you can do that I'm always excited to see like what else can we really pull out from the mechanics that they have. I always like playing kind of quirky characters of sorts in that they do different things. So playing characters that like break the standard rules are usually what I like to play. Characters that will like randomly build or maybe mess with their momentum or mess with their discard pile in different ways. I really like this extra bit because I like all these little pieces. I like sequencing all these tiny bits of things, and that's always been a lot of fun to me. And UVS really scratches that itch in a way that honestly some other games can't. Like, I can plan out my turn very quickly in some other games. This one, I mean, I can still sequence some basic things, but I still need to have a dialogue with you as the player in order to better figure out what's going on. And so that's why I really enjoy this game. I get to talk with you.
Exactly.
Not your deck.
The decks that I enjoy playing most are always the ones that I find you can't goldfish, right? So if anyone doesn't know, goldfishing is where you play the deck into an imaginary opponent. And I like the ones where it's like, doesn't actually tell me anything to play it into an imaginary opponent because I need their answer to my questions. So it's great to know that that is also what you love about this game. But with that, we've ran a little bit long, so I want to go ahead and wrap up here. Thank you so much for joining us, David. I hope that you, the viewer, enjoyed this second retrospective. We'll be coming each week, and the last one I may have said Friday. And I think we're releasing on Mondays now. We'll figure it out. All right, it's a new production. All right,
All
exactly. But I do want to shout out real quick. In the description will be that blog that David was talking about, just like in the description of last week's video. So please go check that out. We're trying to vamp it up and get all of our content kind of in one spot. So that's always going to be a good place to check if you enjoy the things that we make. But with that, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else important for the viewer?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just want to shout out our team once again. I know this is kind of a little self-referential of sorts, but they honestly were probably the best part about Atlanta. Just seeing all of us cheering at 25% of top cuts, by the way. Just a quick reminder. But just everyone there, no matter how people had done, and we even had people who didn't play but still came to support. That's you, Danny. We love you.
We do love Danny.
And so that's honestly the main thing. Other one, honestly, that I need to shout out. You can see jersey in the back. I learned the game in Rochester. I have to shout out Rochester. They were where I learned the game. My home and heart is here, but I think I left something in Rochester, so I'm gonna have to go get it back at some point.
For sure. And we also, you can never go wrong shouting out Rochester because they do so incredibly much for the game. So make sure also, while we're talking about big events, that you go to Nationals if you have not had the chance to go to an event before. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Rochester seems to be putting on a fantastic showing for that event. It's going to be, 3 days now of just absolute jam-packed action and amazing experiences. I can promise you that.
Plot twist, I will actually be there, just not competing. I'll be helping out Rochester.
Perfect. But yeah, with that, I think we'll see you guys later.